Welcome, everyone. This is Dana Eklund, and you are watching On With Your Life. And today I have somebody who I love so much. She's so special to me. We met in Branson, Missouri at our church in 2009. And wow, Tammy is her name, and she is a gem of a friend. And she has, I tell you, been with me through some really hard times. And she's one of those friends that she's a forever friend, even though we are clear, almost 2,000 miles away, not quite, but almost that far away. We're still friends. And so we just text here and there, and that's it. But we are there for each other. I know that. But I want Tammy to share her story. This program, we're talking about the sexual perversion merry-go-round. And there's lots of sexual perversion out there, but Tammy's is specifically about coming out of the gay lesbian lifestyle. And that's a big thing right now. But back then, 44 years ago, it was a very secret thing. And so her story is unique in that you don't hear too much about older the ones who were lesbians, lived a lesbian lifestyle that many years ago. So, Tammy, thank you for being vulnerable and coming on this program and sharing with us your life.
Well, thank you, my pumpkin friend.
I know we have this pumpkin thing going. It's awesome. Yeah, we have this who can send each other the most exotic pumpkin picture in the fall.
I always think of you when I see anything pumpkin. So that's awesome. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't mind talking about this because of what the Lord has done in my life. And it seems like forever ago and it was, but I just turned 59. And so,
59, yeah.
yeah, I just turned 59.
I'm
So,
her older sister. I'm her older sister.
so this all started when I was in high school, and I had gotten burned. I think I would say I got burned by so many guys that I thought I would just try girls for a while because that seemed to be an option, that a door that had opened to me. And I thought, oh well, this could be fun and interesting. And so I began to hang out with people that I knew were gay or lesbian. And I think back then we called it alternate lifestyle. And I don't know if that's a term these days or not. But so I started hanging around with other people my age and older that were in this lifestyle. And you hang around with people long enough and you'll slip in. And so I found myself in relationships probably as early as age 16, sexual relationships. If you
With
can call it
girls.
if you can
With
call it
girls.
sexual, yes. Um, yes, with girls my age and older, up to 5, 6 years older, maybe even older than that. But just relationships, emotional bonding. I can relate. There's warm fuzzies, that kind of stuff that you associate with a regular relationship, but it's also there, even though that to me it's a perversion of what God's design is. But when you're a teenager, that doesn't really matter to you so much. And I think it's important to say that I wasn't raised in church. I wasn't raised around anything godly or anybody godly. I really had no boundaries. I could do whatever I wanted, and I did. And this fit right underneath that. You can do whatever you want. And so I began to have relationships with girls in my teenage years. And there was a time when my dad, we may get into a little bit later, his lifestyle and how that may have had an impact on me. He had written a letter to a friend, and I found this letter. I was probably 16 years old, 15 or 16 years old. I found this letter, and he had written to a friend, so and so. I think Tammy's seeing women, or I think she's gay, or something like that. And this guy's comment back to him was, well, can you blame her seeing the way that you treat women? And so I know
Okay.
that probably kind of helped push me toward some of these things. There's a lot, and we'll get into that. But I then I did have relationships, and I mean many relationships, some very short term, some they're all unhealthy. Some of them are more unhealthy than others. I had some long term. My longest term relationship was 6 years. So this lasted around 8 or 9 years from the time I was 15 to 24, probably
So,
almost 10 years.
Tammy, excuse me, let me ask you to be specific about when you say you have a lot of relationships. I mean, some of us in high school, girls who have relationships with boys, you're talking about, oh, I had like, 3, 4 different boyfriends through high school. But what are you talking about when you're saying numbers?
Probably all in all, the whole 6 years or the whole 9 years, including that 6 year, maybe probably 20 relationships,
Mhm.
full on relationships and other mind playing games and flirtations. And it's just, it's just like the heterosexual world, only
Mhm.
you have all women instead of men and women. It's the same bad scene at the bar, pick up at the bar, or
Okay.
sleep with someone overnight that you don't even know. It's the same thing. It's the same perversion with the same sex.
Right. Okay. And nobody knew, right?
No, not really.
I
The
mean,
long term relationship I had for 6 years was kept undercover from family members. I don't know that they, like I said, it wasn't the same as it is now. It's not out. It wasn't out there. It wasn't as embraced and promoted in particular as it is now. And so it was like you're keeping a secret. And that's the thing I think kind of helped it thrive when it was in the dark. You would try to keep it a secret, and you would you would play games with the other person, to try to do whatever you could without people finding out. And so it was
okay.
enticing because it was secretive.
Okay. Go on. Sorry.
So probably through my teen years, and then at 17, age 17, there was an event that happened. Then I made a move from Illinois to Oregon. And I think at that time I was going out there in my junior year of high school. And I thought, I've done this for a couple of years, and I probably need to not do this anymore, just to get away from this lifestyle and just try to get healthier. I didn't eat good. I drank all the time. This wasn't very healthy. And so I went out there with family members that were a little better off than we were. And I ate better, and I got off caffeine and alcohol, but I didn't change. I found myself in more homosexual relationships or environments. I found
You were
myself
drawn to that? You were drawn to that, would you say?
because you for the most part you see somebody and and so there was this
Mhm.
still this thing that kind of drew me. And sometimes it was just like, can I see if I can get them to like me or whatever. It's just
Wow.
game playing. But not only that, as far as sexual perversion, I hate it that sex has been perverted. I hate
Yeah.
that the thing God designed has been perverted so much, but we're a fool to not think that it has been major.
Right.
And so I found myself also in a sexual relationship with a neighbor that was married. It ended up be involving his wife as well. So I guess you would call a threesome. That's what they called it back then, a threesome. So there was sexual relationships where I was with the husband and the wife was there, and there was even a point in time I thought I was pregnant in that scenario. But in that also was involved porn.
Porn? Did you say porn? Okay.
Yes. He
Sure.
is actively involved in porn. And I so that went on for a while. And honestly, even after I left Oregon and went back to visit, they invited me over, and I went over just as a friend. And he tried to get that whole thing back up again, starting it with porn. And I said
Okay.
no, because I'm in a homosexual relationship now. I'm not going to do that anymore. So it's just terrible.
Okay.
so, but so out there, I was finished high school out there and continued on with some of that. And then I drove back after graduating in 1983, drove back to Illinois and just got just jumped right back into the party scene and this same group of friends that I had left, that most of them were in the lesbian lifestyle. But then I also had, we can get into this a little bit later, but I had kind of an inner vow that I wouldn't end up on drugs and pregnant and everything by the time I was 16 because my family had told me that I would. And so I made sure that I did. Well, now I'm not 16 anymore. I'm graduating high school. I've come back to this area and I'm like, I can do whatever I want. I fulfilled that. I didn't end up being what they said. So now I'm going to sleep with all the guys that I flirted with and I didn't, and I'm going to, do this, I'm going to do that. So it was just a heyday of relationships.
Okay.
And, but, like I said, it seems like such another person that
Yeah.
I don't even know if I know how many, but there were a lot. And so that was when I was 18. So for the next 6 years, it was full on homosexual, gay lifestyle, bars, relationships, softball, um, beaches, you name it, everything. I even went to church. I even went to a gay church. And
Okay. Wow. Okay. I forgot that you had told me that. And I want to go back to the softball club um, at some point. But remember that because I want you to explain that. That needs exposed. So go ahead.
yeah, so I remember one time getting high, driving in a van, going to church with another friend that was in the lifestyle.
A
And
gay church.
this one I think was a gay church. No, I don't know that I ever got involved. I didn't really get involved in like metropolitan community of churches and that universal or whatever the different ones are. But I just remember being there and they said it was a gay church and they said we could go. And I was talking to my husband about this the other day, and we have to get to the point where we have to get to that point of how it was really involved in me coming out of all of this
Yeah.
and getting out of that cycle. But um, what was I just talking about? This is
Sorry, I
this
got
is
you off.
long.
You were in the whole thing with softball, going to gay church, and 6 year lifestyle. I mean,
Okay, no, so we went
relationship.
to this. So I found myself on the way to church, and they said it was a gay church, and we're smoking pot, getting high in a van on the way to church, and I didn't really know much about church. In fact, I was talking to Paul the other day, just a couple weeks ago. We were talking, and I said, Paul, I said, because I am the church now, right? I fully embrace the church, the body of Christ. And it it occurred to me, and I told Paul, I said, Paul, when I was growing up, when I was making all these choices, I didn't know there was a church. I didn't know there was a body of Christ. I didn't know that there were people that loved you and loved one another, and that there was this option as of the body of Christ. I just simply didn't even know it existed. He said, really? I said, I'm not kidding you. I didn't go to church. I think I went to a vacation Bible school. I didn't know about church. I believed in a God and I heard maybe a little bit about Jesus, but I didn't know about the love of God and the love of God that comes through his body. And so when I went to that church, I was like, okay. And I do remember that they offered communion, and inside, I didn't know if I could take communion. I didn't know enough about that. And it felt odd to me. And so, anyhow, I almost 9 years. And after a long term relationship, 6 year relationship, and a lot of unhealthy, a lot of fighting, a lot of drinking, something inside of me started to change. And I was living in Illinois and working in a hospital and lived in a little trailer park. And across the street from where I lived there was this family, mom and a dad and a little boy. And I would get up after drinking all Saturday night. I would get up on a Sunday morning early enough and I would walk over to the window and I'd open the drapes and I'd look across and I think, there they go again. Do, 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 do. They must be going to church. And I don't know why I got up and looked all the time, something drew me to that. I was intrigued or interested or something. And so that went on for months. And come to find out, they knew exactly the kind of lifestyle that I was living across the street from them, but they still had me on their heart. And so one one day in April, it was a Wednesday night, April of 1989. No, yes, it was 1990. It was on a Wednesday, and it would have been in April. And I walked across the street. I kind of got up the nerve to walk across the street, and this neighbor, the guy, was outside working on his mobile home, because that's what you do when you have mobile homes. And so he was working on his skirting, and I walked over there because something inside of me drew me over there. And there was this curiosity and there was this drawing. And I walked over there, and I cannot even explain to you what I saw in his eyes. When he looked up and shared his testimony with me, it was like it was like his eyes were just full of the love of God, and it was transferring. There was something there. And he shared his testimony, drugs, all this kind of stuff. He came out, and I thought, that's just really awesome. That's wild. Something was drawing me, and so I was interested in that. So I went back across the street. He invited me to church. That was on a Wednesday night. He invited me to come to church that night. And so I went and called one of my gay friends. I said, "Hey, do you want to go to church with me?" Said, "Sure." What kind of church? I said, "Well, it's one of those churches where they really get into it." And she's like, "Okay." Well, she went that night. She never went back because they had pamphlets, that talked about homosexual.
Oh, even back then?
Yeah, there was something there that she was like, "No, I'm not going back." But I had built a little bit enough a relationship with this couple across the street. They invited me then to come back on the next Sunday. So Wednesday night, I went to church Wednesday night. He invited me to come Sunday. He said, "Come Sunday, I'm preaching. I'm going to be the speaker that day." And so, that relationship kind of helped draw me. And so I went that Sunday, and that was May 2nd, 1990. And that's the day I got born again. I responded to the altar. When they asked for people to come forward, I did. And his message was, "Give me $2 worth of God, please," I think was his message. And I don't even know that his message, I don't even remember if his message meant as much to me, but I know God drew me that in his love and truth. And so then I like to say, "Hey, everything was perfect after that, right?" No, it was that, because the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and immediately comes to try to steal away. And so
Battle.
the very next day, I was standing at the end of my 60-foot mobile home where the kitchen window was doing dishes. And my neighbor, the same one that shared his testimony with me, he was a runner. And so he ran in front of my trailer, and he looked up and he saw me in the window, and he saw downcast. He saw my countenance. And he went home and he called me. He said, "We need to talk." And he explained to me, some of these things, like where the enemy will come and try to steal, from your heart, the word. And so he started discipling me and showing me right away how to handle some of these attacks. And the attacks they were plenty. And so I walked at a really rough time, but yet it was also a glorious time. But the enemy tried to destroy my relationship with those people, uh, the neighbors.
The neighbors.
Yeah. And his wife, she would just walk with me, and she would say, "Do you have any questions?" And they loved me, even though they knew I had been living that lifestyle. And even though they knew I was struggling, they walked with me during this time, and such a blessing. So you want me to start kind of the way Paul plays into this?
Yeah. So, you went back to living still with this partner, right? You were
No,
still
I had a
living
roommate. I just had a roommate that was gay. I was not in relationship at this.
at this time. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
still
Yeah.
had lots of friends because that was my world, but I was not in relationship at this time. I had been probably not in a relationship for about 6 months.
Oh, okay. So, okay. So, um, Paul and Tammy have been married 33 years this month in February 2024. And that's amazing. And they have two kids and a grandbaby, and I'm sure more on the way, but beautiful family. And I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but meeting Tammy and Paul and their family, you never would have guessed what Tammy is telling us right now. We never in a million years would I have spotted that ever in her past. She was that different. She is that different. But so Paul didn't go to the church that you got saved in, right?
Yes, he did.
Oh, he did. You just didn't. Okay, go ahead.
So I got born again May 2nd, 1990, and then of course I started going back to I started going to church, and I noticed this kind of um, thin, red-haired young man there, and he was one of the few single guys there. And there was another guy there that was kind of trying to get my interest and stuff. But once I got born again, I would say 90+% of things fell off. All things are passed away. Behold, all things become new. I mean, I cussed like a sailor the day before in
Okay.
not sense. I, there were things, now there are some things I had to walk out. I really had to walk out and walk completely free of some things. But I was a new person. I went from life of the party, dancing on the bar, at the bar to shy and not even really wanting to talk. And it was just total transformation, not shy in
Mm,
a bad way, naive. Like I was a
mm,
new creation.
yeah.
And so
I love it.
we began going to doing ministry, nursing home ministry and things like that. And so this was a whole new world to me. And I felt clean and good.
Wow.
And my desire, I just had a desire for a godly man and a new way of living.
Mm.
And I used to say that it was like a microwave conversion because it had started 6 months prior inside and then came out to fruition when I
Mm.
walked across the street and got invited to church and responded to make Jesus everything to me. And then, so there's this, I used to say that I met the perfect man and then I met Paul. So I met Jesus. Then
That's
I
so
met
good.
and and he so
That's good.
just think about this though. He had been raised in a Christian home.
In the
He had
church,
set
and
himself aside for almost 4 years, set apart and not dated or done anything. And then he
wow.
had petitioned God for a wife. And here comes this heathen of a woman that,
Yay,
you know,
Paul.
could break into cars. We were at a Bible, and he came to one of my Bible studies, and somebody locked their keys to their car, and I'm like, "Oh," walked out there, and I'm like, and he's, "Okay, all right," you know?
Wow.
So anyhow, so this is the amazing thing.
Mm.
We started talking, hanging out, spending time together. Within 2 weeks, I had shared everything about my past. And
Mm.
in 3 months, we courted we dated for 3 months. He asked me to marry him, and we were engaged for 3 months. 6 months from meeting one another, this
Wow.
man married me, and that takes
Oh
faith.
my God. Mm.
That takes faith. He had a he had a
It's-
Christian
you
back.
got to know.
But
Wow.
there's no way we could have really known. God had a
Mm.
plan. Here's one of the best things about this whole testimony that I love to tell, and we did not find this out for almost almost 20 years. When my kids now, so we got married in 91 and we started our life together. We went 5 years before we had kids, went to Bible school. And so now we're back in Branson. We moved back to Branson in 1990. The kids are in junior high, high school. So, but this particular year, they're both in high school. And I didn't know that I would ever share the fullness of my testimony with my kids, but it came up in my heart. And I'd seen a video where a lady had shared about her past. And so uh, it just seemed like I was supposed to. And so we gathered them together one night called a family meeting in the living room, and I said, I want to share something with you guys. And our kids are pretty cool, and we're a close family. But it was, it was a little different. But if the Lord said to do it, I want to be obedient. And so I shared with them my testimony and how I had been involved in an alternate lifestyle. And they didn't really know, it wasn't the right term. And, but they got it. And they were talking about it. They're like, okay, everything was fine. They're like, okay, mom, cool. Love you. And so about that time, Full began talking about, when we met, and he was believing to be married. And a friend of his said, had you even thought about the fact that she might not be born again yet? And he said, well, no. And so he petitioned God for a wife. He made a list, a petition, a prayer petition for a wife, put it in the Strong's Concordance. You remember Strong's? It's the great big thick Bible.
Oh, yeah. I've got one right here.
Yeah. Under W for wife, he put this prayer petition for his wife. And he got that out, and he was sharing. So the whole conversation was pretty intimate with our kids, and we endeavor to share our hearts and our lives with them. And so he shared about how he had prayed and asked God for a wife, and he got that out. He opened up the Strong's Concordance, went to W, pulled it out, and he read it to them. And we're all talking about, oh, that's kind of cool how I end up being like, what he petitioned God for.
Oh,
and then he read the date. Remember, I told you that at the end of 1989, like the October, November, December 1989, my desires began to change. I used to say, like started on the inside out. It just, something was changing inside of me, and I didn't even understand it. He looked at the date on that letter, Dana, October of 1989. He started praying for his wife.
Oh my goodness.
And we both just started crying, Paul and I, and I looked at him, I said, Paul, you prayed me into the kingdom.
Oh man. So many people need to hear this.
His prayers were having an impact on my heart.
Yes.
And the Holy Spirit was wooing me and drawing me through his prayers. We didn't know that for 20 years.
Oh my. Oh,
And
wow.
it makes me love my husband all the more. And then, he basically discipled me. He helped me grow. God helped me grow exponentially. But to know that my husband prayed me into the kingdom, and God used him to affect my eternal salvation and eternity. And, when we discovered that, I was like, okay. And so then when I shared this with our church the other night, because now here we are 10 years later, 13 years later, and standing in front of a congregation of our own.
Yes.
And I told them it's a miracle. It's a miracle that God kept me. We never even went into some of the things that happened when I was born, and some of the things I went through, and some things our family went through. He kept me year after year after year after year. He kept me when I was doing things that were pleasing to him. His love for me kept me through all those times. He had a man pray for me, and then he had that same man love me. And
that's right.
And then he kept loving me, and he watched me grow, and he helped me grow, and it had to take faith and patience. Oh my goodness, I just can't even imagine. I mean, I had to be obedient, and God just helped me so much, because I didn't have anything healthy to bring to the marriage relationship. I didn't have anything healthy to bring to being a mom, and God helped me 100%, so much. And so it's a miracle. And then to know that we went through a whole nother season with me welding, and just all that.
They're
To
busy.
be standing in front of being pastors to a group of people, saying all that, God kept us for such a time as this. Here we are. They're all just bawling. They're all just crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so wonderful. And I was about ready to run, because
I'm not ready to run. I'm so excited. I'm just like, this is February. Everybody associates February with Valentine's Day of love, but the worldly love. But I wore red to represent love, the love of God. And your story is the love story of all love stories. I mean, the
It's
love
right.
of God, the love of Jesus that poured into your heart, that was given to you, that you received. And then to have Paul, the love story of Paul, your husband, praying for you
Yeah.
before you even were born again. I mean, people pray for your spouse, singles, pray for your spouses right now. I've told many people that. And Tammy and Paul's story is such a wonderful story and example of that. Wow, I'm so excited to hear that part. That part I don't think I heard before. I don't remember hearing that, but I'll tell you, this how far Tammy has come in her purity and her healthy sexual intimacy. Like I said, when we met them in 2009, well, I would say we connected, or kids connected, and we've been friends. And then around 2000, we were talking probably around 2013. Um, Tammy and I are starting to talk, about marriage intimacy a little bit, which was highly uncomfortable for me, but not for her. She had come that far. She was that healed, that whole, had such a healthy sexual intimacy with her husband, godly, pure, nothing nasty about it. And here I am, this married person, who's been married for a long time and still struggling with some of my, like, I don't want him to even see me naked kind of thing. And so Tammy's so funny because um we got close and we were talking, like, say, about sexual intimacy and so forth, which she didn't know it, but she was ministering to me and helping me to come out of this religious mindset that I had developed over the years about sexual intimacy in marriage. And so I share a lot about that in my book, Off the Merry-Go-Round and On with Your Life. But there was one time when Tammy and Paul were traveling for business, and she just out of nowhere texts me, and um, we're close friends. So she texts me and she says, "Hey, guess where I'm at?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Where are you?" And she said, "I'm in Climax, Illinois." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." She texted that. She said that out loud. She is, oh my goodness. I was like, "This is awesome." At the same time, I'm like, "Oh my goodness." This is unusual, that she's so comfortable with those terms. This is so refreshing. And I tell you, she really helped set me free. And God used her. And we're just really believing that her testimony, her story of hope coming from no more gay, this lesbian lifestyle, lesbian mentality, to this pure, wholesome woman of God, um, prayer woman, godly mother, wife. I mean, it Proverbs 31 woman. I mean, she's like that. Yeah. So, but I do want to back up, Tammy, and go to, like, where all this started. I mean, you did share where you started this at age 15 or something, where you started experimenting and so forth. But why do you think you started experimenting? What started that spin?